Alhamdulillah. Allah fi kuli umri yasta'in. Allah fi kuli umri amjid. Wa Muhammadan huwa sayyidina makbubana. Wa innahu kana rasulun nabiyyan. Salawatu Rabbi taslimatihi alayhi. Wa amma ba'd. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Equity wa ukwati fi din wa kulli makan. وأنا أريد أن أتكلم عن مجاهدين في سبيل الله من طائفة منصورة رحمت الله وبركاته عليهم. أهلا وسهلا بكم. Thank you for showing up, our brothers and sisters and those in the chat and who may view this in the future. About this talk on the Ta'ifatun Mansurah, also known as Baraka Najia. And our Prophet ﷺ talked about them extensively in a number of hadiths. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't name them per se, but he did talk about them in various parts of the Quran Kareem. And why it's important is because you as a Muslim, even a non-Muslim, they should be very aware of these particular titles, the Ta'ifatun Mansurah, or if you hear Faraka Najia. And because these are a special group that are handpicked by Subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they will arrive in the future. They'll be like no other. They won't be like the ones that you see today. Salamu alaikum, my dear brother. And they won't be you won't be able to measure them with the Muslims that you see today, because they'll be rightfully guided by Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Even though we do have these ones, as I've said before. And I'll give a recap for those who did not listen to the last khutbah that I gave. And I'll give you a synopsis of who are these people, the Ta'ifatun Mansurah. They are the best of the Muslims. Their jihad is literally perfect, meaning that they have been able to purify their heart, to win the battle against Shaitan, and to quell and to defeat the munafiq, who is the hypocrite, and also the disbeliever who fights the Muslims. This is basically the concept that our scholars have given for what jihad actually means in this context. Again, jihad does not mean that it's you pick up weapons and you start killing. The form of jihad, yes, when there's war and so forth, that's a different. But then again, we go back to an issue. Anytime you enter, before you make this jihad in any type of endeavor, you always first must purify the heart and your attention when you get ready to do something like that. But that's a subject all in itself. Those are books that takes a while to talk about this, because it's very difficult. Here we're talking about a group of people. I wanted to give you some characteristics of them. And when people talk about the Ta'ifatun Mansurah, especially those who do not know basically what they're talking about, they'll read from books and they'll give you some things, but they would never call these people out. They would never call the name of these brothers who would be involved in this. And here I'm kind of breaking it down to you so that way you can understand, because we must bring it in context of modern times, as I stress many times, that that the individuals that we're talking about here are here. They're everywhere, but they're not in a group yet. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has not gathered them yet. So they may die and others may transform, and this will happen. But one day, Subhanahu wa ta'ala will put the conditions right where he will call the Muslimin, the Muslims, who have the characteristics of the Daifatun Mansurah. They have the jihad, which is good. They are the best of the best. They are sincere. And they are meticulous about their salat. They are meticulous about their wudu and their prasana. And they only govern, rule, judge by the Quran and by the Sunnah of our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. And in this future, they will come. And anyone who's studied extensively on what we call the last hour is the end times. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us some indication, but our Prophet has given us a lot of information about that, which differs greatly from that of the Christians in their book, the Bible, which is the last chapter. The last chapter of Revelations of the Bible is very cryptic. It's not easy to understand. But here, our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, has broken it down even much better, because he is the seal of the prophets. So and Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you many times in the Quran that he brought down the Quran in Arabian for you to know. So that way, when you learn this language, the worldly matters and the matters of the hereafter will be understood because of the Quran in Arabian. And Subhanahu wa ta'ala says it in a number of places in the Quran that this language is that so you can understand. And this is a language also that will be in Jannah. So the back at issue at hand, I'm gonna go into some steps. I won't finish all of this because we cannot, because it takes quite a few times to talk about what's going to happen. The members, the Muslims inside the Daifatun Mansurah, they have certain things about them. As I said, they struggle vis-a-vis Allah. Their I guess what you say, their actions, everything is governed by Islam. When they wake up, when they go to sleep, when they go to prayer, when they go out, their actions are governed by Subhanahu wa ta'ala. I mean, and he's guiding them, and they make meticulous dhikr on Subhanahu wa ta'ala and on our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. That's one of the again characteristics of the Muslim, the mu'min, who's a devout believer, who has the characteristics, who will come in the future to be belong in the Daifatun Mansurah. The second thing about him is he is sincere, meaning that he is sincere in his actions, with his hands, with his mouth, and with his heart, which is very difficult for us to do. But this particular individuals will be this way. Third, he is he's a mujahid, meaning he's a struggler, meaning that his life is based upon, again, jihad, not jihad as you see today, but the groups that I talked about last week that I said don't follow them. We're not talking with those kind of individuals. We're talking about the real people who take examples from the Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, the first 3 generations, and then the generation after that. That's what they're guided by. And these individuals are not killers. They will not go to plant bombs in stores and kill a bunch of people. They won't run airplanes into a building or something like this. They won't go and put a bomb under a school bus. They do not go out to kidnap young Muslim girls or boys and try to force them into war, to fight, or to to marriage or anything. These guys are almost perfect by the book. Then number 4, as I said before, this jihad they have has been purified. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has guided them to purify their jihad. Their persona, there's something about them. They have this light that none of us have, because again, Subhanahu wa ta'ala has handpicked these particular Muslims. And his battle against to cleanse himself has been won. He is now cleansed. His heart is cleansed. So he doesn't have that battle of the nefs. He doesn't have his inner soul tell him to go drink beer, or to go out and date, or to go and do things that's wrong. This type of thing that we all have to face every single day, he's not facing that. And his battle against Shaitan, his battle Shaitan is a winning battle for him, because Shaitan is tired. He can't get to him. He can't lure him away from Tawheed. He can't lure him away from his jihad. He can't lure him away from the Quran and the Sunnah. So he gets tired and he moves on to softer targets. And the 5th characteristic about him is that he is well versed of who the enemy is. He knows that the enemy is those who fight the Amr, the command of Allah. He knows that very well. He gears his animosity, his enmity towards them. Because during the time when these people will come, when these brothers will come, the world will be in such a bad condition. And if any of us are living, which I don't think in my lifetime is going to happen, but it's coming. By the hadith, we know that. We know that during this time, the earth is going to be in a very sad state. It's already in a sad state, but it's probably going to be 100 times worse at that time when these guys begin to come. Because Subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to bring them to restore peace. He's going to restore humanity, because it's going to be so bad on the earth that, if any of us are living in this time, the fitna, the tribulation is going to be so great. One of the proofs that we have about what Subhanahu wa ta'ala feels about the jihad from the person who is sincere. He talks about this in Surah Hajj, which is Surah 22. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear about his love and about his admiration for those who practice this type of, again, the purification of the heart, the fight, the constant battle against Shaitan, against the hypocrisy of the munafiq, the hypocrite, and the disbeliever who fights the Muslim. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says here in Hajj 22:78, and I read it in English because we don't have Arabic speakers. And strive in his cause as you ought to strive, with sincerity under discipline. He has chosen you, has imposed no difficulties on you in religion. It is faith of your father Abraham. It is he who has named you Muslims. Interesting. Both before and in this revelation, that messenger may be a witness for you. And you may be a witness for mankind. So establish regular prayer, give charity, and hold fast to Allah. He is your protector, the best to protect and the best as to help. This is what Subhanahu wa ta'ala says in this beautiful verse in Surah 22, Hajj. Again, this jihad here, if any of us can have this, we're on our way. You are living in such a high state of faith. And this is why there's many other verses in the Quran. But for brevity, I give you this one, which I like the best, because he really designates what he feels about the jihad. Now, I have to talk about something to Muslims to make sure they understand something, because why? There is active jihad in many parts of the world, in Africa, in particular, the Middle East, Afghanistan, Pakistan. Okay, we know that. It's all over the news. And we've had Muslims lured into these jihad, these wars with many of these Islamic groups. And if those who weren't present last week, I talked about these groups. I said, don't follow them. Don't answer their call to jihad. Why? Because they're not Da'ifatun Mansurah. They're not. Subhanahu wa ta'ala has not designated them that. And you say, Yahya, how you know this? Is because by their actions. The Da'ifatun Mansurah don't kill in the manner that most of these Islamic groups who are fighting in the jihad are doing. They will not do this. And so they err in their way. Therefore, since they are doing this, you should not follow them, because they are not. You make your bay'ah, if it ever comes, if you live during the time, you will know when the Da'ifatun Mansurah comes. You will know them. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, our prophet in his hadiths has give you indications. When they come, you will know it. Then this is time when you give your pledge. But right now, you cannot give pledge to the number of jihad groups who are practicing jihad, but they are in error of this jihad. You stay away from them. You don't answer their call. Now, reason why I have to talk to you in this fashion is because some of the Muslims, the new Muslims, they come into Islam, and of course they're impressionable, they're young, they're wanting to fight for the cause of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're not sure how they can do it. And suddenly they see something on television, or they go to YouTube, and then they see certain things, and then they see a call to jihad. Because they're new, or even they maybe now have become stronger in the deen, they still have not understood the Sharia Islamiyah. They still not understood the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ. So they go to answer that call, and we know it's been a big mistake. We have had African Americans who left, quite a few, matter of fact, especially from the East Coast, left to go into these groups. And I know they were lured because many of the groups do have certain characteristics of the Da'ifatun Mansurah, but they have a lot of characteristics that are not. That's what makes it where you know it's not them. And it's important to know one of the hadiths that traps the Muslims without knowledge, and because they don't read and they have not gained the knowledge yet, is this one hadith, which is a serious hadith. And it's talking about the black flags of Khorasan. This hadith has been played around with, and even some scholars have used it, knowing full well that it's a weak hadith. You should not use it, but they use it. And some of these mujahideen groups use that. And so therefore they trap the unsuspected into joining them. But I'm here today to explain to you that this hadith, and it talks about where it's been a number of these hadiths come out, where they talk about the mujahideen will come from Khorasan. If you look at a map, Khorasan, they say, the scholars are saying it's kind of like in the area in between Afghanistan and modern day Iran. And they said that Mujahideen groups will come from this region. They will carry black flags. They will not be defeated. They will march all the way to liberate Jerusalem. In Arabic, we call Quds. Many of the groups have used this particular hadith to draw Muslims to this jihad. And this, I'm telling you, this hadith is weak. It's weak. You cannot use it. It's not authentic. And you have to be very careful. And speaking of this, the black flag that they're talking about is not necessarily just a piece of cloth, but on the flag, because in Islam, we only have one flag, and that flag is actually black. And it has the description of the of Tawheed. Actually, the flag is actually called the flag of Tawheed. But what has happened again is these groups have taken this flag and have misused it. And so the West looks at the flag that the Prophet ﷺ they had during his time. And he didn't say no to it. They made it and they carried it into Mecca. And he did not say no to it. So he gave tacit authority that it's okay. This is the only flag that we know that is authorized. But the Mujahideen groups that we see today have used this flag. They have made it into a beautiful array of different things, different colors, different, calligraphy, this on it to trap you into coming. And the West looks at this flag as a flag of death, meaning that is, groups to kill. The Ta'ifah and Mansoura will come, but we do not know if they will be carrying flags, not because there's nothing to indicate that. There's none to indicate that this is actually the case. So we know that they will come, and we know that they will rise. We also know who they'll be. The final one will be under. But there's no mention by our Prophet ﷺ from authentic hadiths that they will be carrying these black flags, even though the black flag with the inscriptions on it, and many of you seen that, it says La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. This is on the flag and it's Tawheed. But again, it has been made, it's been dirtied up and sullied by groups who go and misuse, a jihad and going out to kill. And this hadith that they use, I'm saying again, there's Sunnah Tirmidhi, Sunnah Dawood. This hadith is there. And there's some others, I think, in Ahmed. There's some other well-known scholars of hadith who have talked about this particular hadith. And the isnad on it is rated da'if, meaning the Muslims cannot use it. And this is a science. And again, you should learn, the Muslims learn your religion and learn the hadiths, how and which one you can use, which one that we're authorized to use and go by, because there's a lot of them out there and thousands have been discredited. And check Albani, Rahim Allah, he said this particular hadith is da'if. I like what he says and many other scholars too. But when I hear it from him, I say, okay, definitely then he's telling the truth, because he's an expert. He was an expert on the hadiths, and he said it's a weak hadith. So again, you'll see a title, The Black Flags of Khorasan, and it's a beautiful title. And then the verbiage in it is enough to attract anybody, any young Muslim, especially who wants to enter into the arena of fighting for Islam. And he reads this and he said, oh, I'm on my way. Who can I go? And suddenly he goes to Syria. And he has a rude awakening when he finds out exactly the people are not what they say they are. They're not the Ta'ifah Mansoura, but now he's trapped. So I'm giving you this advice for the future, even inshallah, the brothers who may read this, see my program, and then they'll be geared to not to join this. And you heard it from me again. As I said, that this hadith is not right. And speaking of that, and I'll move on to another subject, and then we're going to get more into another part. The groups that you see today, they're everywhere. I'm not saying they're 1,000% wrong, because they have some rights to do what they're doing. But the killing, the kidnapping, and this type of thing like this, no. This makes it all criminal what they're doing. They cannot be followed. You cannot give no pledge to them. You cannot. You can't offer anything to them, meaning your money or anything else. You cannot. It's forbidden because they are doing wrong. And remember something in the Sharia. If you go fight your brother who's a Muslim, you cannot fight him to bring him to democratic ways and means. No, you can only fight him to bring him back to the Sharia. That's our law. And so that's the other side of the coin. The Muslims who say they're Muslim, they go to fight. Salaam alaikum, my dear brother Isaac. The Muslims who go to fight the Mujahideen, fight them to bring them to what? To democratic ways and means. That's also wrong, because that is subhanahu wa ta'ala does not recognize any law except his. He does not recognize the law of the disbelievers, the Americans, the British law, the French law. He does not recognize that. So any Muslim who goes to fight for that cause, to fight me, to bring me to American law, bring me to British law, he's wrong. As a matter of fact, some scholars say that those who do that have actually apostated from the religion, because subhanahu wa ta'ala told us in Surah 4, 141, that you don't use, that he will not allow the disbelievers' way to be used against the believers. And if you go join this to use their way against another believer, many of the scholars say that you have just apostated yourself out, not by your mouth, but by your actions. So be very careful with that. And to understand, again, that if you go to fight your brother, you fight him because he's erred in his ways, but you bring him back to the right Sharia. Meaning, in this instance, those who are fighting kidnapping, like in northern Nigeria, who's kidnapping, you go to get him, you go to battle with him, you go to bring him back, you bring him back to the Sharia. You don't bring him so you can turn him over to the kuffar, to the disbelievers. No, you don't bring him to democratic ways and means. No, you bring him back to the Sharia. Then you're okay. You're all right. You go to talk to him and you say, my dear brother, you're doing this. You must stop this. You have the right to go to talk to him and tell him this. You bring the emir and you talk to him and ask him, what authority are you using when you go to kidnap these kids and you go kidnap these men? Or you go to another group who's setting bombs in Syria and you ask them, my dear brother, Amir, what are you doing? Where you get the proofs to say that you can do this? And now this is okay. But to go to him, so you can bring him to America or to bring him to the kuffar, you cannot do that. The subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear in Surah 4, Surah Nisa 4, and in verse 141. You do not put the ways of disbeliever on a believer. You cannot do it. You cannot do it. It's not authorized. And I want to make sure we got that clear. It's not authorized to do that. But we have Muslims doing that. We have Muslims running to go join the armies with disbelievers, to go kill other Muslims. And those Muslims who they do get, they take them from the Sharia, because they are practicing some forms of the Sharia, and then try to bring them to democratic ways and means. It's wrong. Cannot be done. You don't join the armies of the kuffar. You do not. You cannot. It's forbidden to do that, because they are not governed by subhanahu wa ta'ala's laws. The West, their laws are made by their own wills and desires. They don't use, as I explained, do they use the laws of Jesus alayhi salam? No. Do they use the laws of Moses alayhi salam? No. Abraham? No. None of the prophets, they don't use any of their laws. Their laws that they've created is from their own desires to keep them in power. You cannot use them as Muslims against another Muslim. You just cannot. Now we're going to talk about the Ta'ifah Mansoura under the Mahdi. Now, the Mahdi will come. The Prophet ﷺ has many hadiths in Sunnah Dawood, he talks, and he has a chapter on this in particular. And I'll give you a short little brief story about the Mahdi and why you should learn about him. Because he is almost like the modern Muslim today. He was weak. He was not devout. And overnight, subhanahu wa ta'ala made him devout. And the powers to be at the time, they were Muslims, they were aware of him. And so they wanted to kill him. So he left the Medina and he went to Mecca. And those, I don't know if you understand this, the rule that the Prophet ﷺ has laid down, and it has not been abrogated. No one can abrogate this. I don't care if you are a criminal. You can always seek refuge at the Kaaba in Mecca, at the Kaaba. You cannot be touched. You cannot be killed. This is the rule. So he went to the Kaaba to hide and to seek protection. At this time, there were now other groups, hypocrite groups, ruthless Muslim groups were coming now to Mecca to kill him. And what happened was subhanahu wa ta'ala was going to have none of it. And he essentially made an earthquake, and these groups were swallowed. When the people, the Muslims, learned that this happened, they came to the Mahdi and made bay'ah to him. Now, my dear brothers and sisters, we have many imposters that will come. Okay, some in the past and some perhaps in the near future, they will say that they're the Mahdi. And I know that there's Islamic groups today say that they have the Mahdi with them. This is not the case. I'm going to tell you why. One of the distinguishing factors is that he did not want the rulership. He said no to it. He didn't want it. And these guys take it. They want it, they ask for it, and they take it. This is not the Mahdi. If you read the hadiths, the Prophet some have made it clear. He did not want it. And the people came to him. He still did not want it, but he finally accepted it after these conditions were fulfilled. And so it was fulfilled. Now, the Daifatun Mansoura, the last of the famous, began to develop to come to protect him. These were the best of the Muslims, and they came, and his rule was 7 years, and the whole world was under his power. And now we have to go back a little bit more on something. The Muslims who don't understand, and the non-Muslims don't understand what happens about the time of the hour. Okay, this is the last days. This science, you have to have a deep study in it, and you have what is called the minor signs, and you have the major signs. I gave one of the minor signs last week when I talked about the Bedouins building tall buildings. The Prophet ﷺ said that you will know that you're in this particular time of the minor signs before the end of time is by the Bedouins who will build the tallest buildings. That has come to pass. That's come to pass in the the Emirates, the UAE and the Middle East. They have some of the world's tallest buildings, and they were built by whom? Bedouins. So that's a condition. We know that we're there. We're in the minor signs because those buildings were built. The Mahdi will come at a time which is very interesting. He will come at the time, he'll be the last of the minor signs, and he will come at the beginning of the major signs. And major signs, there's a lot of them, and we'll take a week or even longer to talk about the minor and the major signs. And I will say this, and then I will continue. There's going to be probably other, perhaps talk about this thing. They may not be able to go deep into. They'll just read some things about the end of times. And I suggest, my dear brothers and sisters, if you can, you find somebody that you can learn this under, so that way you can get a firm understanding. Because every Muslim, and even non-Muslims, should understand what's going to happen. Because some of the things are happening in front of you now, non-Muslims and Muslims alike. Things are happening in front of you as we speak. As I explained to you about the al-Harj, that the ruthless killing that's happening, especially in America. But we also have ruthless killings in Mexico as well. And remember, the condition of that ruthless killing of the al-Harj is what? The killer doesn't understand why he kills, and the one being killed does not understand why he's being killed. Those are the two conditions of the al-Harj. The killer does not know why he's killing, and the one being killed doesn't understand why he's being killed. We're starting to see that. We see that in Mexico as well. We see that in the United States. We see it in some parts of South America. We see that in some parts of Africa. We see that in some parts, even in Europe. So it's starting to manifest itself. We know we're in the minor signs because we see the ruthlessness that is happening. So what I'm saying, my dear brothers and sisters, is if you read about this and you learn it under some student knowledge or scholar, you should, because you should understand what's going to happen to your kinfolk, inshallah, when this time comes. And you should teach that to your children and to your kinfolk, to your family. So that way your children will be versed in it. They'll be well aware of it. They'll know how to fight it. Because when the major signs come, the most infamous man will come. He'll be 1,000 times worse than Trump. You guys call him, the Christians call him the Antichrist. We know him as the Masiha, the Ad-Dajjal. And the Prophet ﷺ described him fully on how he looks. He will be the beginning of the major signs to the end of the time. And he will be at the time of the Mahdi. The Mahdi will be able to face him. Now the world will be in prosperity. But when the Dajjal will come, ruthless killings will return. He will be able to perform miracles that are defying. It's not understood like cutting the person in half and then bringing the person back into one person again. These are some of the feats that he will accomplish, and people begin to follow him. The Jews will actually begin to follow him as well. The Mahdi will engage him. The Ta'ifatun Mansoura will engage him. They will not defeat him, but they won't be defeated as well in this time. Then here comes Jesus, alayhi salatu salam. He will come, and then he will slay the Dajjal, and they would defeat his armies. So this is part of what's going to happen in the future. And if our prophet gives us this, it's so, because all the minor signs that the prophet has talked about is coming to pass. He talks about the major signs, and we know that when he says something, because he is the seal of the prophets, we know it's to be true. That's why we say a lot of times, Sadaqa Rasulullah, meaning he is true. The prophet of Allah is true in what he says. And so the Ta'ifatun Mansoura will come in the future. And all Muslims should strive to be like them, ask subhanahu wa ta'ala to be among them. That means, again, as I explained, meticulously doing things right, following the Quran and the Sunnah. You do this, you'll be part of this fabulous group. And I'm not saying that because those in the West, it's very difficult to do this. I understand it. I'm not saying that in the West that you dress like me. You cannot. I mean, I can imagine you walking down the street, you look like me. Oh, I mean, down the street in LA, I can imagine what's going to happen. Anyway, the hadiths, Prophet ﷺ, if you were in an area that you should not dress in such a way that you will stick out. We know that hadith. So you cannot go down the street looking like me in LA or in Mobile, Alabama, or Dallas, Texas. You cannot. But it's very difficult to practice in the West. We understand it, but you do your best, my dear brothers and sisters, to follow this, to follow the Ta'ifatun Mansoura, to understand them, understand these words in Arabic, Ta'ifatun Mansoura, and also Farqa, Najia. Okay, this is Najia. Excuse me. This is the two words that subhanahu wa ta'ala, our prophet uses to talk about this fabulous group of Muslims. It's important that you understand them, because in some ways it's part of faith. Because if you don't believe in that, then you are a disbeliever, because the Prophet ﷺ talked about them and they're coming. So if the Prophet talked about them, you must believe. He talks about them in authentic hadiths. You must believe in what he says. So therefore, when he talks about the Ta'ifah and Mansoura, you must believe in him. You must. You cannot say, I don't believe in them. I don't believe it's going to happen. If you do that, then you're out as a Muslim, because you cannot pick and choose what to believe, what your prophet has said. You cannot pick and choose what Subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran. You must adhere to it. Now, let me give you some other background here. The Mahdi, if you understand where this word comes from, Arabic, there's some other meanings to it. I won't get into that because we don't have Arabic speakers. But let me explain. This is a title. This is not his name. The title means rightfully guided by Allah. Mahdi. Rightfully guided by Allah. This is going to be a title given to him. So this is something that, again, we should know. We should understand, because it's part of the hadiths. You have to learn it and you should understand it. And I'm hoping that, inshallah, my dear brothers and sisters, Muslims, non-Muslims, that you read about the Mahdi. There are no hadiths. And if you hear speeches talking about him, his life, the 7-year reign, it's going to be something beautiful. Do you know that the whole world, the killings, all the injustice, it'll be justice. When he asked to give sadaqah money, no one will ask for it. Because why? Everybody belly will be full. There will be justice. There will be happiness. They even talk about the animals will totally be different as well. They will know that his reign on this earth, he is called the Khalifa of Subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is what Subhanahu wa ta'ala feels about him. Now, let me also backtrack on this. My dear brothers and sisters, if you get somebody who talks about the Mahdi and they start using something in the Quran, they're wrong. Subhanahu wa ta'ala does not mention anything about the Mahdi or him coming in the Quran. If you hear somebody talk about that in the Quran, they're wrong. They're wrong. There's no mention. The scholars, none of our great scholars said that Subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions him inside the Quran. But there are instances where Subhanahu wa ta'ala, like that verse I read to you, talks about a special person, special people. And the Da'ifatun Mansoura is special. The Muslims in it are special. And he's got like Surah 37. I listed it in here. Surah 37 is beautiful. If you read this, if you want to be devout, this is also something you should read. That surah, because he talks about the devoutness of a Muslim. And he gives names also. Mukhlisin, okay, Mu'mineen. He gives variety of names to describe the deep, devoted believer. You should strive for that. It's a beautiful surah. That's Surah 37. That whole chapter is beautiful. Not just one verse. The whole verse gives you guidance to help you as a Muslim to be a better person. And even the non-Muslim, it can even help you to clean yourself, to help to purify yourself as well. It's not only for the Muslims, but mainly for the Muslims. The book, remember something, the Quran was given as a guide for mankind. That means all of us, non-Muslims alike, because you can learn from the Quran and you can learn from our prophet, because our prophet was sent as a mercy to mankind. And for us to understand and learn and to learn from his way, non-Muslims and Muslims alike, because he was the best of human beings. So this is something, my dear brothers and sisters, that you should be proud of. And you have things that you can learn from. You wake up and you have tears and you say, I want to be strong. I want to be a strong Muslim, but I don't know how to do it. How do I do this? Who do I go see? Well, you could begin by this particular Surah 37 and read the beautiful. If you could read it in Arabic, it's even better. It is beautiful. It's so melodic. But even if you read it in English, it should set you in a pattern to what God wants, and it will help you. So take my guide from your brother. If you want to better yourself, you read that. Even the non-Muslims, you can prosper from this because Subhanahu wa Ta'ala gives you a beautiful guide here, how to improve. So now let me also get into something here. As I explained to you, the Prophet, when he went to the Mahdi, he was a weak Muslim, and he restored him in one night to make him strong. This is a condition why I know that when you have people, I hear people call themselves the Mahdi. There's Islamic groups that say we have the Mahdi with us. I don't want to laugh, but I want to warn you, my dear brothers, they're not the Mahdi that the Prophet ﷺ was talking about. They're not that. They're not it. Because Subhanahu wa Ta'ala has not went to them, and he's not restored them. And he doesn't have people. And even though we have Islamic groups that made bay'ah to this particular individual, he is not the Mahdi that the Prophet ﷺ was talking about. So you be careful of them. I'm not going to get into those groups now. I don't want to get into that. So in closing, my dear brothers and sisters, this part of the chapter talking about the Ta'ifatun Mansurah is not complicated. It's enriching for the Muslim and the non-Muslim to look at the triumph of people when they are clean. And again, the Ta'ifatun Mansurah, the Muslim in it, he's got a light of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala over him. The scholars talk about that. His jihad is literally perfect. He's both a good father. He's a good husband. He's a good person in the community. He visits the mosques, all the mosques. He goes to the prayer. He's meticulous about his prayer. His influences without the sword is great. And I'm gonna give you also a preview of what in the future. We'll talk about what's going to happen in these great wars. They're in the hadiths. There's going to be some vicious wars, and the Muslims will prevail. And we'll go back. We'll have prosperity again, and then we'll go back to the killings and the despair and the tribulations on the earth again. That's why it's important, my brothers and sisters, that we have our young children and we have our young men. We should teach them this, because we don't know when the minor signs will begin to end, because we know when the Mahdi will come. That's the end of the minor signs, and it's the ushering. When the Dajjal come, that's the ushering of the major signs. But we're starting to get near the end now. We're starting to get near of the end of the minor signs. Our children should be made aware, and they should be very studious about these particular hadiths and about this particular group. We have an obligation to teach our children. We have an obligation to teach them about the end times, because I was young too. You think that you're going to live to 500 years, that you're invincible, that you cannot die. I mean, you know how you are when you're a young kid. You think that you're going to live to 90, 100, 200 years, no problem. You're going to be strong as ever. That's not the case. And so we should educate our children and our families to talk about these end times, and also make dhikr to Subhanahu wa Ta'ala that he spares you from the Dajjal. You should ask that, because when he comes, the earth is going to be in such terrible state, and the Mahdi will go to fight him. And even the Mahdi will not be able to defeat him, even though the Dajjal won't defeat the Mahdi either. But he will not be able to defeat him until Isa alayhi salatu wasalam descends from the heavens and comes down to slay the Dajjal. So you should brief the family on these particulars on this. It's your obligation to do that because it's beautiful. It's something that will give you pride. And also it warns our children. When our children have their children, they also teach their children, because we don't know when the minor sign is going to end. And believe me, when the minor signs end and when the Dajjal come, you think Trump is something? This is nothing. You're talking about big time wholesale killing. And this man will create miracles all over the world, and he will be the false Christ. Arabic call him Moseha Dajjal. That's what we call him in Arabic. And he will give all of these things, and people will begin to weaken and follow him, thinking that he is he is Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ, when he's not. So it's important, my brothers and sisters, that you do this. And recap, the Ta'ifah Mansoura is coming. They're coming, my brothers and sisters. And their jihad is not like that of what we see today. I want that understood. If when the enemies of Islam come to you, or you have arguments at work, or somebody come to you and they start talking to you about certain things, you can talk to them about the group that will come. And you also make sure that you explain to your detractors that the people that are practicing they're in wars and so forth, trying to take over these governments, they are not the ones that the Prophet ﷺ is talking about. Secondly, you as a Muslim, you don't answer their call to jihad. You do not. And you don't send no money for them, and you don't do anything to help them, because they are not the Ta'ifah Mansoura. Even though they are your brothers in faith, they are wayward. They're wayward. You can do nothing to bring them back. And you should not join them, because you do not want to die on the battlefield, and your knee will be examined at the time. And you will be asked in the grave about this particular jihad that you went on. Was the conditions of your jihad fulfilled? And this is this is another area of fiqh. Was your jihad fulfilled? Meaning, not anybody, any person, any man can pick up a gun. We know that, and shoot, okay? We know that. He can pick up a knife. No problem, easy. It's easy to go out in the street and fight somebody and kill them, or have a fist fight. That's not the jihad that we're talking about, our scholars talk about. It's not the jihad that Subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about in the Quran. Have you read the beautiful words that he said, striving in his cause? Striving in his cause doesn't mean you go and get a gun and you shoot a disbeliever dead just because he disbelieved. That's not jihad. That's criminal. So the jihad condition has to be met, and the first of it is the purification of the heart. The purification of the heart. So the person who wants to go on jihad has to have that qualification. He has to have that heart purified. He has to have at least a grip on conquering the devil, because he's going to come at you all kind of ways, and we know that. And you have to have a way to do that. You have to have a handle on the hypocrites who are around you, and then the disbelievers. We know who they are. We know the Western governments who are fighting the Muslims, and you see what they're doing in Africa. They're trying to impoverish Africa. We know what they are. We don't need to talk about them in length, because we know what they're doing. And let me give you something, and then we'll close here. We have many groups, and some of the groups are notorious, and their Aqidah, remember the faith, is not right. They're bad. Now, you talk about the Ta'ifah Mansoura. The exact opposite of them are the people they call the Morjia. The Morjia. Many of you may not have heard of them. The Morjia are part of a group called the Khawarij that the Prophet ﷺ talked about in the Hadiths, and that we had the Caliph Ali, the last of the Rashideen, radiallahu anhu, he fought the Khawarij. The Khawarij were so-called Muslims, but they had a concept that was quite different. They fought to kill Muslims, while the disbelievers, they were kind to them, but they go to kill the Muslims. And we have the Khawarij among us today. They are hard on the believers. very difficult. They even side with disbelievers against the believers. But then they are very kind to disbelievers. But we have the Morgia that you should be aware of, my brothers and sisters. The Morgia are people who have twisted the religion. And when you see them and you hear them, they may tell you they're Morgia. And you'll see them. They may be dressed beautifully. You see them in the masjid, their prayer is perfect. You see every step of the way is good. You see them, they may be meticulous in their wudu, when they're making wudu. You may see them when they're making they're reading the Quran. They may even be hafiz, meaning that they memorized the Quran. And you can see them, they can talk and their speech is melodic. But they're morgia. Let me tell you the difference about them, my brothers and sisters, so you don't be lured by them. They're out there and they are recruiting. They're recruiting, and it's amazing how many people are starting to believe in this concept. The Morgia believe that you have Iman, faith, right? And then you have sin. Here's sin. They believe that you can commit any sin that you want. That's right. Murder, fornication, selling drugs, taking drugs, drinking, stealing, robbing, a whole host of criminal activity. Okay, you can do it, and it doesn't affect your faith. This is what they believe. So people who are deviant, who still want to be Muslims, are gravitating to that because now they say, you know what? Hey, I'm a Morji. So yeah, I go out at nighttime. I leave my wife at nighttime and I go out with some girls and I have fun, but I'm still a mu'min. I'm still a deep believer. Or another young Morji may say, you know what? Yes, I'm a deep believer because I make my prayer. I'm meticulous about my prayer. I read the Quran every day. But yeah, I go out there and sell hashish. And then another Morji who comes in there and he says, I'm a deep believer. And he robs the people on the street. These are the Morgia. These people, they're not Muslims, my dear brothers and sisters. I don't care what they read in the Quran. They are not, because they go against all of the Sharia, because there's nothing saying that this person is a deep believer. Matter of fact, if you go to Surah 23, Al-Mu'minun, the first 11 explains that. He tells you to what? To protect your private parts, right? Remember that? That's one of the conditions of being a mu'min. The Morgia don't believe that. The Morgia believe that you can go to, if you have desire, if you desire, you want to engage in sexual activity with different women, you can. It has nothing to do with your faith. So I've given you that to give you knowledge on different groups. And then the last, and I will close. You have the munafiqeen. You'll know one of the conditions of the munafiqeen is his attitude. You watch them. One of the things of the munafiqeen is this. 99, as I explained to you, 99% of the time, he is around what? Non-Muslims. 99% of the time, he's doing what? Praising non-Muslims. 99% of the time, he is gravitating towards them. He likes their laws. He participates in activities with them. He considers them friends and protectors. Now, here's come the believers. The munafiq is hard on the believers. He doesn't hang around with them. He talks against them. And if he's in power, he legislates against them. He refuses to take them as friends and protectors over, even though subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordered us as Muslims to take the believers as friends and protectors over the disbelievers. He has reversed this, which again, remember I talked about the wallah wa bara. Remember that? I talked about that. The munafiqeen, these people, the hypocrites, you'll know their characteristics. So I'm giving you education, our brothers and sisters, so you can weed them out. When you see them, they are 99% with others. Or you'll see them on TV. You'll see them one day, boy, they got beautiful kufis on. They may even have an imam like mine. They're dressed Islamically. You see them making dua with their hands. You see them talking every other word. He's mentioning Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that's Friday night. You see him on there. You feel good. You see, oh boy, Yahya, boy, I love his speech. He's a strong Muslim. Saturday morning, you wake up, you turn on YouTube, and then you see this munafiq. You see him. He's with a bunch of women. A bunch of women. And holding hands with some of them. And he's been intimate with some of them. And these women not even Muslimas. They're not Muslims. They are disbelievers. Now you have education to understand. Salaam alaikum, my dear sister Amina. You have some education so you can understand the people that are around you. They're everywhere, my brothers and sisters. The hypocrite is the most damaging because he is inside the ummah. The morji, he's among us. He goes to the masjid just like you do. He does everything like you do. Be very aware of them. Be very aware of them. I'm giving you education. Stay away from them. This hypocrite, again, you watch. You'll see these guys. You'll know them. They're hard on the believers. I mean, very hard. They work against them. They talk against them. They legislate against them. They lie on them. They misjudge them. They have nothing to do with them. They'll go even in the community to lie against them. But then when you ask that hypocrite, what about this robber over here? He's a Christian. Oh, he gives you, I can't talk against this guy. It's against what the Quran says. Why he didn't think about the Quran when he was talking with his brother, the believer? This is the fikr, we call this in Arabic, the concept of the hypocrite. This is the hypocrite. Beware of them. Never take knowledge from them. Even though you see him Friday night giving beautiful, eloquent speeches about the religion, but then Saturday you see him again with disbelievers. You see him out again with women, or you see him with a wine bottle and he's drinking. You'll know that who he is. So be very careful then, my dear brothers and sisters. So again, my brothers and sisters, the Ta'ifatan Mansoura is a group that you should understand, you should strive for. Make dua for them. Because they will come in the future and you make you give your salam. You give your salam to them. You ask Subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless them when they come, because they're coming, and that they will be victorious. And our prophet, that's why they call the victorious sect, because they will be victorious. And you pray for them, and you make your dua for them, because they're worthy of that dua, that prayer to Subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're worthy of that. They're worthy of us to emulate them as well, to strive to be like them. Ask Subhanahu wa ta'ala that we be among them, and that he sends us on this particular road to heaven under their guide. And so, my dear brothers and sisters, I want to thank you, my dear brother Malik. Thank you very much, my brother Isaac, as always. Thank you, my dear brother, for showing up. My sister Amina, thank you very much for showing up today. And those that may show up in the future as well. And I'm going to conclude my talk today on the Ta'ifatun Mansoura, and I hope that you've gained something out of this, and that it will enrich your life as a Muslim. We still have some days left before the end of Ramadan. So, my dear brothers and sisters, be meticulous about your prayers if you can. I know you don't get much sleep, and the system is going through changes because you've been fasting nearly 30 days now. You get close to 30 days. So those things are, your body's changed somewhat and everything. And I know me as an old man, I still have, my wife jokes about me because I'll start thinking about cookies, things I'm not even eating, but somehow or another, I start thinking about the cookies. I say, yeah, boy, I can't wait to break fast. I'm going to eat this and that, but it doesn't happen. But that's my inner soul talking to me, because I still have the American in me, the thing, thinking about the foods. And but our Ramadan is coming to a close end here, inshallah ta'ala. My brother Isaac says, I will reply this great notch. Okay, yes, replay. Yes, my dear brother, thank you for that. And also some of you, my dear brothers and sisters, you get it, you spread it. If you want somebody that to get an understanding about the future they can come and you know, share my tape. There's no problem. You do that, and revisit it again, and you know, get the information from it, and then it's a good study guide for you. I gave you that the Surah 37. Surah 37 is a beautiful surah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking beautifully in it about the beautiful Muslims who have this particular faith, and so you learn from that, and then you know, it'll better you as a Muslim, and even a non-Muslim too. It would even better you if you read it, even in English. You read what Subhanahu wa Taala said. It will help you in your life to understand. So, my dear brothers and sisters, thank you for showing up, and those in the future who may watch this. And I'll leave you with the beautiful words of paradise. Salamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi barakatuh.